Silence, then breathing. Wet, laboured. The sound of air dragged through ruined lungs, filtered through metal. November 25th, 1177. You're looking at a teenage boy who can barely close his fingers around leather reins. His hands, wrapped in linen bandages that were white this morning, are now stained rust brown. Beneath those bandages, flesh is rotting, bone showing through in places. Leprosy doesn't just kill you, it erases you, piece by piece, while you're still breathing. The silver mask hiding his face isn't decorative, it's necessary. What's underneath would make hardened soldiers look away. 3 miles ahead, the horizon has disappeared. 26,000 warriors, mounted cavalry, stretching so far across the plain that the dust clouds look like fog rolling in from the sea. Banners, green, black, gold, snapping in the wind like the wings of hunting birds. The Sultan Saladin commands them. 40 years old, undefeated, so confident he's already sent messengers ahead to Damascus, describing tomorrow's victory feast. Behind the boy with the silver mask, 500 knights. That's it. 500 exhausted men on exhausted horses, wearing armor dented from a dozen previous battles, holding lances with chipped points and swords that need sharpening. The math is simple. 52 enemies for every Christian. The kind of odds that don't even merit discussion. You don't fight those odds. You surrender or you die. Every advisor told him to stay behind Jerusalem's walls. Every military treatise ever written says this is suicide by cavalry charge. Even his own body, nervous system destroyed by disease, joint swelling, skin splitting, is screaming at him to stop. Baldwin IV does something impossible. He gives the order to charge. What happens in the next 3 hours will break the mind of everyone who tries to explain it. Christian chroniclers will call it divine intervention. Muslim historians will call it a catastrophe sent by God as punishment. Modern military analysts will study it for centuries and still struggle to make the math work. But here's what nobody tells you about Montgisard. The battle was already lost before a single lance was lowered. Saladin had made no mistakes. His army was rested, well supplied, positioned on perfect cavalry terrain. His commanders were experienced. His warriors were elite Mamluks, slave soldiers trained from childhood to kill. The Crusaders were outnumbered 52 to 1. So how did 20,000 of Islam's finest warriors end up dead in a single afternoon? The answer isn't what you think. And it starts with a decision Saladin made 3 days earlier. A decision so logical, so obviously correct, that it would destroy everything he'd built. Before we watch history unravel, quick word. If you're the kind of person who gets pulled into these documented moments from the past, the ones that textbooks somehow forget to make interesting, subscribing helps us dig deeper into the archives and uncover more of these stories. All right, back to November 1177, and the most dangerous man in the Holy Land is about to make his first mistake. Jerusalem in 1177 isn't the golden city of psalms and paintings. It's a corpse pretending to breathe. Walls cracked from 80 years of siege, streets half empty, because anyone with sense fled months ago. The holiest city in Christendom, defended by fewer soldiers than a modern high school has students. The kingdom is held together by scar tissue and denial. And on the throne sits a 16-year-old boy whose own flesh is betraying him. Baldwin IV wasn't supposed to be king. He wasn't even supposed to be alive. Leprosy in the 12th century isn't just a disease, it's a divine curse made visible. Lepers ring bells to warn people of their approach. They're buried in unmarked graves, erased from family records, treated as if they died the moment the first white patch appeared. But Baldwin's father, King Amalric, saw something in his son that disease couldn't touch: intelligence, clarity, a mind that cut through problems like a blade through silk. So when Amalric died suddenly in 1174, the crown went to a 13-year-old boy who would never marry, never have children, whose kingdom was already being measured for a coffin. Facing this dying kingdom stands Saladin, Born Yusuf ibn Ayyub rose from military commander to sultan through tactical genius that would make Machiavelli weep. By 1177, he's done what generations failed to do: unite Egypt and Syria under one banner. One purpose: take back Jerusalem. He's 40 years old, prime of power, commanding endless gold from Egyptian trade, warriors from a dozen territories, siege equipment that can crack fortresses like eggs. And here's what should terrify you: Saladin isn't a monster. He's pious, diplomatic, respected even by his enemies. He follows the rules of war, but rules don't matter when you're facing annihilation. By autumn 1177, Europe has stopped sending help. They've written off Jerusalem. Even the Pope is quietly negotiating what happens after it falls. If this moment doesn't move you to understand how close we came to watching civilization pivot on the actions of a dying teenager and 500 desperate men, you're missing the lesson our ancestors died screaming to teach. The world doesn't care about your odds, it only cares about your will. But there's something else about Baldwin the chroniclers, mentioned only in passing, almost embarrassed. He smiled before battles, not nervous bravado, genuine anticipation. A leper king whose nerves were so destroyed he couldn't feel pain anymore, who had nothing left to lose, grinning behind his silver mask as armies 20 times his size assembled on the horizon. Think about what that means. Pain is your body's warning system. It tells you when to stop, when you've gone too far. Baldwin's warning system was dead. He could push past every threshold that would make a normal man collapse, and he'd never know until something actually snapped. Saladin, for all his brilliance, never understood what that meant. He was about to learn. November 23rd, 1177, Saladin's army crosses into Crusader territory like a flood breaking through a dam. 26,000 mounted warriors. The supply train alone stretches for miles. Tents, food, siege equipment, portable forges to repair weapons. This isn't a raid. This is an invasion designed to end the Crusader presence in the Holy Land permanently. A Muslim chronicler writes, "The banners of the faithful covered the hills like stars fallen to earth. The hoofbeats sounded like thunder that would not end." Saladin's plan is textbook brilliant. Bypass the fortress of Ascalon. It's garrisoned, fortified. Why waste time on a siege? Sweep north along the coast, cutting Jerusalem off from the sea. Strangle the supply lines. Wait for starvation and internal collapse. He's done this before. It always works. Inside Jerusalem, the situation is worse than desperate. It's mathematically hopeless. Baldwin's advisors, the few nobles who haven't already fled, lay out the numbers in the throne room. City garrison, 750 men, mostly infantry. Available knights, maybe 500 if they call in every favor. Templar reinforcements, 80 warrior monks, already exhausted from defending border castles, against Saladin's 26,000. Raymond of Tripoli, one of the kingdom's most experienced commanders, says it plainly. "Sire, we should negotiate terms while we still have something to bargain with. If we ride out, we die. If we die, the kingdom dies with us." The room falls silent. Baldwin sits, slumped in his throne. Standing for more than a few minutes causes his joints to swell and crack. His advisors can see him trembling with the effort of staying upright. But understand what he's weighing. If he stays behind Jerusalem's walls, the city might hold for weeks, maybe months if they ration carefully. But Saladin will burn every village, every farm, every church within 50 miles. The civilian population will suffer, slowly, horribly. If he rides out with 500 knights, they die quickly. But Saladin's army, busy slaughtering knights in open battle, might not have time to devastate the countryside. The peasants might survive long enough for help to arrive from Europe. It's not a choice between victory and defeat. It's a choice between dying with purpose or dying slowly while watching everyone else suffer first. Baldwin lifts his head. The silver mask catches torchlight. "Raymond, how fast can Saladin's army move when it's spread out foraging?" The question confuses everyone. Raymond frowns. Slower than usual, sire. They'd need time to reform ranks, but... And if we hit them while they're scattered, the room goes cold. My lord, with respect, Raymond gestures at Baldwin's bandaged hands, his wasted frame. You can barely mount a horse without assistance. Your hands can hold reins. That's all I need them to do. What happens next is recorded by multiple sources, Christian and Muslim alike, because what happens next is so insane that no one believes it until enemy chroniclers confirm every detail. November 24th, Baldwin IV, carried on a litter because his legs can't handle the palace stairs, is brought to the royal armoury. Knights help strap on his armour. His hands are so damaged the fingers won't close properly. They have to tie the sword to his wrist with leather straps. He orders the entire available force to prepare for immediate march. 500 knights, 80 Templars, 3,000 infantry, north, towards Saladin's army. Odo of Saint-Amand, the Templar Grand Master, a scarred veteran who's fought in a dozen battles, actually weeps when he sees Baldwin lifted onto his warhorse. The king's body has to be strapped to the saddle. His legs no longer have the strength to grip. They march at night, 45 miles in 36 hours. For context, that pace would exhaust healthy cavalry in good weather. For men carrying a dying king and knowing they're marching towards certain death, it borders on impossible. But here's where it gets strange. As they march, Baldwin keeps asking his